The smell of that person was genuinely unbearable. I'm serious, I didn't want to stand anywhere near them, not even for a minute. An interview. And I didn't really think that he could, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I gave him my phone number and forgot about it. About 2 weeks later, I get a call. That was the shocking remark Clint Walker once blurted out during a rare conversation with the American press late in his life, when he no longer felt any reason to stay silent out of respect for Hollywood's so-called unwritten rules. What stunned the public even more was that Walker was not talking about obscure figures. He openly pointed to a list made up entirely of major stars, faces that always appeared polished and immaculate on screen. A leading actress would share lipstick and makeup brushes for years without proper cleaning, while a legendary male star clung to habits from his military days, going unwashed for days, sometimes even a week, treating body odor as something natural. There were also those who willingly slept on beds crawling with insects during remote location shoots, never once voicing a complaint. So who were they really? And what consequences did these hidden habits leave behind for themselves and for the people around them? These are the stories Clint Walker said Hollywood never wanted you to know. Or 1. Angie Dickinson sharing unclean makeup and accepting harmful cosmetics. During that interview, when asked whether there was a memory he wished he had never witnessed in Hollywood, Clint Walker did not answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, let out a long breath, and then spoke slowly. Yes, and it started very early. At Warner Brothers, Walker went back to the late 1950s and early 1960s, when he was working frequently at the Warner Brothers studios in Burbank. It was the period when Angie Dickinson was at the height of her fame, a beauty icon who appeared on screen with an almost flawless, perfectly polished image. But according to Walker, what he saw behind the camera was a completely different story. From the first few weeks, he said, I realized that the image audiences saw on screen only existed under the studio lights. According to Clint Walker's recollections, Angie Dickinson had an extremely casual attitude toward personal hygiene behind the scenes, especially in the makeup area. At the time, one makeup room typically served several actresses at once, but Angie almost never asked for personal items or for tools to be changed. Lipstick was passed from one actress to another, wiped quickly with a tissue, then applied straight onto the next person's lips. Walker clearly remembered those lipsticks being handed around while the color on the previous actress's lips had not even fully dried. It was not just lipstick. Foundation brushes, eye brushes, mascara, everything was reused repeatedly throughout the shooting day. During long workdays lasting 10 to 12 hours, especially on crime dramas and Western films shot on enclosed sound stages, sweat, skin oil, and dust built up on the makeup tools. Walker recalled that Angie would still sit down in the makeup chair as if nothing were unusual, continuing to reuse the same items for the next scene. What truly made Clint Walker feel unsettled was not only the lack of cleanliness, but the consequences he witnessed firsthand. There were periods when Angie Dickinson frequently suffered from red, irritated eyes and persistent stinging, needing to use eye drops during breaks in filming. The skin around her mouth and eyelids was often irritated and inflamed. But instead of stopping, more powder was applied to cover up the signs of trouble. Walker said this was not uncommon in Hollywood, but Angie's complete disregard for the issue made it impossible for him to ignore. The context of the time only made things worse. According to investigative reports by the Los Angeles Times and Time magazine in the early 1960s, many cosmetics widely used in Hollywood contained heavy metal compounds to maintain color under studio lighting. Clint Walker later mentioned that when those harmful products were combined with shared use and poor hygiene, negative outcomes were almost inevitable. In the film industry, this was referred to as the price of beauty, and Angie Dickinson was not an exception. These stories gradually became whispered rumors behind the scenes, Around 1962, some writers for photoplay and modern screen began hinting that Angie Dickinson frequently experienced health issues during continuous shoots, though they used only mild phrases such as behind-the-scenes fatigue or work pressure. According to Walker, people on the film crews understood the real cause very clearly, but no one dared to speak openly because Angie was a key face of the studio at the time. He also recalled the quiet tension between the makeup department and the performers. When someone suggested changing brushes or improving cleaning practices, only to be brushed aside to save time. To Clint Walker, this was a clear sign of a culture that treated personal hygiene as a trivial matter, even when it became dangerous. Watching Angie and many others accept those conditions, he gradually understood why so many Hollywood stars later had to live with long-term health problems. From those experiences, Walker began to limit unnecessary contact behind the scenes as much as possible. A very clear boundary formed in his mind. He no longer wanted to keep working in environments where unclean conditions were treated as normal. And when he left the enclosed Warner Brothers soundstages to step into the harsh outdoor locations, Clint Walker quickly realized one thing. The issue of hygiene in Hollywood did not stop with makeup. In the deserts and Western film locations, he encountered another kind of habit, more direct, stronger in odor, and far more uncomfortable. 2. Charles Bronson, avoiding baths for days because he believed sweat was manly. During the interview, when asked whether stories about unclean makeup marked the limit of his tolerance, Clint Walker shook his head. He pressed his lips together as if weighing whether the next memory should be mentioned at all. "No," he said, "that was only indoors. Out in the desert, it was completely different." Walker took the story back to the early 1960s, when he was working on westerns and action films shot outdoors in California, Utah, and Nevada. Harsh sunlight, thick dust, hot winds, and rough living conditions were part of daily life. And it was in that setting, he said, that he reached his breaking point while working near Charles Bronson. According to Clint Walker's later recollections in rare interviews, Bronson had a habit that Walker described bluntly as completely ignoring bathing. Not for a day or two, but for several days in a row. During long shoots lasting nearly a week in desert locations near Moab, Utah, where the crew stayed in temporary housing or field tents, Bronson never once stepped into the shower, even though basic facilities were available. After each day of horseback riding, rolling in the sand, and standing under the sun for hours, Bronson would simply change his outer shirt and continue eating, resting, and living as if nothing were unusual. Walker vividly remembered the body odor that built up over time. It was not the mild smell of sweat after a single shoot, but a heavy presence that lingered in the air. It became especially noticeable when the entire crew had to gather in tight spaces to wait for lighting or prepare for the next scene. According to Walker, Bronson showed no concern at all. On the contrary, he treated it as perfectly normal. In brief conversations during breaks, Bronson would say that men who were used to sweat and dirt were the ones tough enough to make films like these. To him, not bathing was not carelessness, but a sign of masculinity and endurance. That mindset gradually created tension within the crew. Walker recalled that many crew members deliberately kept their distance from Bronson whenever direct contact was not required. When the shooting schedule shifted to indoor sets or enclosed spaces for recording dialogue, the problem became even more obvious. The heat, poor ventilation, and odor accumulated over several days turned working together into a genuine challenge. Walker admitted that there were moments when he had to adjust where he stood, not for artistic reasons, but simply to breathe more comfortably. These stories did not exist only in Walker's memory. Within the Western film community of the early 1960s, Charles Bronson was well known as someone who could endure the harshest conditions. Behind-the-scenes articles from that era often praised his rough and manly image,